Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash. Double honor as the and apostles of Great Millstone, where it teaches us truth and sincerity. And shout out to Yakims out there in the four corners of the earth proclaim this truth. Raka the Yahweh, Raka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash, Rakatam. So making it demand, making it part of demands, is by limiting how much is available. And that's what you got going on here, as they're tightening the grid to where everything's running short, right? Shortages everywhere. Well, the best way to control people, to usher in the MOTB and the universal basic income, is just to cut their resources. And what's the main resource that everyone needs? Water. Well, this video goes into it.
Something rather nefarious just happened with our water supply, and almost nobody is talking about any of it. And when you guys see what's quietly being put into motion right now, I think you're really going to understand why I am sounding the alarm. You see, right now, the World Economic Forum has just declared 2026 the year of water, putting water scarcity and water infrastructure, private investment, and new financing models at the forefront. And they're really centering, of course, on a global agenda. Now, all of this is happening at the very same time that AI just so happens to be exploding across the planet with massive demands of water that they need in order to operate. And suddenly now we have everybody talking about a water crisis that is headed our way. But here's where I think we really need to be careful, because whenever you hear powerful governments and corporations and billionaires and all these unelected global organizations tell us that a crisis is brewing, we really got to start asking those important questions, right? Who gets the power? And we're talking about water here, right? Who's going to finance this thing? Where is the money coming from? Who's funding it? Who is going to control the infrastructure? And probably the most important question, who controls the water?
Mr. Vaccine himself, Bill Gates.
Water isn't something that you and I can opt out of, obviously. Like, we can turn off the thermostat, we can stop driving our car, we can, do things like that, but we cannot opt out of water. It is what we need to survive. And that is what makes what is happening right now so important, because the future battle over water may not begin with armies, right, fighting over reservoirs. I think it's going to begin with maybe permits, like we've seen in the past, emergency declarations, tiered pricing, water restrictions, mandatory conservation, and
yeah, you remember the water police.
Hey, this is all about climate change. They're going to tell us, oh no, this is caused because of a drought. They're going to tell us, no, it's because of the AI centers or whatever. But the question that I want to investigate today is much bigger. Are they really preparing to solve the water crisis, right? What are they doing to prevent it? Or are they using the crisis to build an infrastructure to control our water, right? Which ultimately will control everything. I've got a lot to share with you in today's podcast, so I'm going to ask that you listen to the report in its entirety. But as a quick reminder, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. YouTube hasn't really been sharing things, so unless you're subscribed and have all
of course,
you're not going to receive those notifications. And additionally, please check out every day. I'm posting a video daily here. And if you really want to be in the know, I want to encourage you, get to restrictedrepublic.com. And we've got all kinds of inside information. I'm going to be doing an exclusive report over there today. You're going to want to see. It comes with a 14-day free trial, and we've got lots of exclusive reports that we're not sharing anywhere else.
Create their own.
There. So sign up and support what we do by getting over
just like W7 has D-Live, etc.
So with that, I want to dive in first to what happened with the United Nations before I get into the World Health Organization. The United Nations has officially declared water bankruptcy. Now, I talked about this in detail on a Restricted Republic report. I encourage you guys to go there, check out the video, and subscribe. But in that video, I talk about how, if things are as bad as, a lot of these global organizations say they may be in our future, then yeah, we could be looking at more COVID-19 style restrictions, and the restrictions that I talked about in the opening, right? Limited water supply, mandating resources, and the whole 9 yards. And this is a crisis we could be looking at. But the reason I find this a little more interesting is obviously they declared global bankruptcy. And what they mean by that is basically we have a lot of people who are suffering with a water crisis around the globe when you take us out of whole. But what makes this even more interesting is shortly after this was published by the United Nations, of course, the World Economic Forum jumps in on the actions and decides to declare 2026, get this, a year of water. So there is a theme with these global organizations going on right now. They are all focusing this year on a water issue. And I don't think it's going to be the only year that they do that. And they say, what is the year of water and how can we address the water crisis? And here's what they say. The world's water currently faces a lot of pressure, a myriad of pressure. One, there's too much water from flooding and sea levels. Two, there's too little because there's droughts and fresh water shortages, dying rivers. Some of that is happening. And three, increased levels of pollution that are affecting the water supply. So they ask the question, or they're no longer asking the question what needs to be done. They're asking how quickly and collectively as a world, and when they mean world, they mean their global organizations. How quickly can these global organizations act? And they say the urgency of the situation was heightened by World Economic Forum's Blue Davos in January, which landed the forum's Year of Water campaign to keep water high on the global agenda through 2026. Look, whenever unelected organizations insist that an alleged crisis requires policies to be rapidly expanded, we should immediately start asking questions like, who gains the power? Who provides the money to fund it? Is that going to be like Alex and George Soros and people like Bill Gates? Or are other wealthy foundations and globalists going to fund this thing? And most importantly, again, who controls the infrastructure once the so-called emergency has passed? And that is what really concerns me about all of this. But they go on to talk about, you know, how many people are vulnerable. Over 1 million people, they say, live in areas of high water vulnerability, according to the UN. And they talk about droughts and the cost of droughts, and 450 billion tons of glacier ice were lost in 2024 alone. I wonder what those numbers look like throughout the years, by the way. I think they're all going to be different because sometimes we have extra, right? But anyway, they also talk about, you know, the fact that a lot of our natural wetlands, the United Nations says, have been erased. And they're talking about over 5 decades, the area the size of the European Union. So they're stressing here how we have these water issues. And they go on to talk about some of the economical impacts that we could be looking at as well. We all know that's part of it. And they, of course, throw out solutions for these initiatives, which all include, by the way, solutions by working with global organizations, right? And here's the deal. What really concerns me about the direction we're heading with water is being treated now as an asset, something to be measured, something to be priced, financed, traded, sold, allocated, whatever, through partnerships and governments, right? Maybe governments and corporations and powerful organizations. And of course, they're going to package this entire thing to you and I as some kind of pleasant sounding sustainability and a responsible way to manage our resources. Every time they seize control of something, it's always presented to you and me as something being done for the good of humankind and under the banner of some kind of looming crisis. If we don't control said thing, then this is going to happen to the world, right? That is how communists gain control. That is how we get complete and government control over our lives. And I think that is a question we all need to be asking about this water crisis, because, hey, I'm going to get into there. I believe that there are ways to fix this, and I don't think they're crazy impossible, but I think there's ways to fix this without all the rigmarole.
Yeah, the only way to fix this, though, is that the Most High be with you. And like everything else, though, the main plan is to do the will of Yahweh Shai. That's your only escape clause from all this, because all this is going to come down on the entire world. So, you know, here we are. This won't switch over. All right, here we are with the dollar, you know. And James Dillon says the dollar will die. No shit. But this should be interesting anyways, right? Because it's all part of the death of the dollar and the ushering in of the new digital dollar. The new digital system, which is going to regulate absolutely everything. So here we are. The dollar is dead. As you know, all the moves being made deliberately to usher in the new digital dollar.
Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here. We're joined once again by Mark Gonzalez over at First National Bullion. This is a major story we found today, and it is by one of the biggest financial establishment shows.
Oh, World Economic Forum.
We should
Same
be
guys.
Because Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan says the U.S. could lose its status as a world reserve currency within the next 25 years. Now, you might say 25 years, that's a long way off. And, you know, if you said that 25 years ago, you would have said that too. However, it's way sooner than 25 years. Let's just be real. We're not going to be waiting 25 years. But when he's saying this, that tells you how far along we are in this move into that reset. Because he used to call people that said stuff like this crazy just years ago. And now he's saying it. So he is going to say the bare minimum. But alongside this major comment, simultaneously, China is saying that the yuan currency, their Chinese yuan, will replace U.S. dollar in the coming years. We have been predicting that for quite some time. But also, and this is pretty crazy, a day ago, Jamie Dimon over at JP Morgan again says gold reaching $5,000 an ounce by Q4, a bullish case for investors seeking a hedge. Jamie Dimon, of all people, is saying gold, which, by the way, usually they leave this to us crazy people on the internet to say, oh, well, $5,000, that's absurd. $5,000 is a major commitment by Q4, which would put silver around above $100. And this is major news. And the reason I'm excited about this is because they always undercut the potential, the establishmentarianists that are involved in when they were making these kinds of predictions. And it says a lot about how scared that establishment is. Meanwhile, JP Morgan is poised to become the world's first $1 trillion bank, and Jamie Dimon is chalking this all up to the AI capex boom. He is basically saying going digital, moving fully, automated, and within the AI system is what is making his bank so much money. Which, by the way, I guarantee you, they don't have most of that money. Like, most of that money is just like a cloud in outer space. There's no evidence of them actually having that. They don't have it in depositors' money, I promise you. But I believe they're collateralizing banks. They're putting them under one big roof. They're slowly moving to take over the small banks and create one big bubble here for banks, which eventually will lead to one system controlling all currency digitally. But again, let's stick to the point here. JB Dimon is saying dollar is going to be finished. China says we are going to be replacing the dollar. Meanwhile, Jamie Dimon, $5,000 gold. So we're going to get into this and more with Mark today. But before we do, I urge people to check that link in the description.
So like
First,
everything else,
nationalbullion.com/get mandated under the guise of convenience that they bring in this digital system, and they will. Of course, we are dealing with inflation and failing banks and markets across the world, dealing with severe shortfalls. I urge people to check that link. Buy physical gold, silver, platinum, or palladium. Hold it in your hands. Put it in a vault or put it in an IRA outside of the traditional IRA system. Schedule an appointment for a free consultation with Mark Gonzalez there and get a free investors package. Just let him know in the comments of the forum when you sign up, which is really easy to do. If you found him at World Alternative Media or WAM, WAM. All right, we got some stuff to unpackage here, Mark. Sorry, I kind of went long there, but it's an exciting thing to come across. I'm scrolling through this stuff and I'm going, man, this is all piecing together rather beautifully, and really goes to what we've been saying for so long. What do you think, first, of Jamie Dimon's comments on the dollar in 25 years before it fails as a world reserve currency? I mean, the Saudis have already pretty much given up on it. The UAE has pretty much given up on it. What do you think?
We've been in a orchestrated decline and de-dollarization for a very long time. Gold is now surpassed dollar reserves on global balance sheets. Gold continues to be bought, dollar continues to be sold, and now with what's going on in Japan, if you don't have intervention, you're going to have a ton of dollars sold tomorrow. So it served its purpose. It still has a function as the reserve unit or the dominant exchange unit, but that affects those that generally have the ability to access and control at the core. So that would be the Federal Reserve, Jamie Dimon of Chase. They can make loans, they can print money. So whenever you're put in that position, you get the best utility of it first. You get screwed. But for Jamie Dimon to come out and start talking about the reserve status, and only a few people have actually said it. That haven't been anybody like, let's say, you or I, anybody of financial significance, so to speak, to come out and say dollar done. That just doesn't happen. His time frame's way off. I mean, the guy's high. He could be saying 25 years, but then again, what is he going to say? 2030? Agenda 2030 is that the timeline we're looking for? So it's soft pedaling in a big way, but we know dollar's done. I mean, that's why people reach out to me, obviously, is because they see that their lunch is now $25 when just 20 years ago, and 20 years ago may seem like a long time, but let's put that realistically, that same lunch was $3. So your lunch has gone up 10 times. Has gold gone up 10 times from 20 years ago? No, it has not. So that means gold has a long way to go, as well as if you look at what the gold price has done relative to other items, gold versus currencies, gold versus oil, gold versus incomes. Everything is devaluing against gold. Right, it is taking its natural place as the dominant reserve above it, beyond everything. So when you have Jamie coming out and say 5,000 gold, now that's not the high we've seen, but from where we're at now, we got $650 to go.
Yep.
That's pretty encouraging by fourth quarter. I don't disagree by any means. But to have that guy in our camp is kind of cool.
Well, it's kind of funny, Mark, because if we said $5,000 just back 2 years ago, people would be like, okay, well, gold's at like 2,000. What are you talking about? What are you smoking? But we did talk about that very real potential, and I found it strange to think otherwise, that by Q4 we'd hit 5,000. But it's come to that point where okay, we have major people out there talking about a $20,000 an ounce gold in the future, and that is really not as far off as people act. It seems like a big high up number. Oh, it's another digit, but I mean, what we're really dealing with here is that's a 4x increase in the price. We've seen that in the past decade. 2002 wasn't. I seem to remember gold being around $900 or something like that. So we've seen major increase since then, and of course we've seen a bubble, we've seen a recession, we've seen all that kind of stuff. But we're witnessing the fall of the very currency system that people have faith in, that they thought they needed to have faith in anyway. And we're finding out real fast that isn't quite the case. We're seeing a shift from the west to the east in a big way financially right now, and that's part of the reset. China was wrapped up as a guinea pig state for the reset. The great reason World Economic Forum talks about China all the time as an example of where they want the financial system in the United States, and eventually we see a crash, and they say, oh, we just happen to have this this digital system already made underneath it, so don't worry about it, don't panic, we will be there for you, we will protect you, we will keep you safe, and we'll have this new digital system that will give you credits and base everything on social credit and digital IDs. I mean, this is something that was already built, and they've already built it for a reason.
And Trump has his own version. They call it Stablecoin and Genius Act, etc.
Yeah, Basel III, which again we have 62 central banks back in September 2024 acknowledging that they are integrating with Basel III to eventually bring in bail-in regimes where they can just take the money out of your bank account. This is not something someone does if there's not an emergency on the horizon. And also another example with the current upswing with gold and silver of where people go when these things happen. So Mark, I mean, $5,000 gold, okay, $20,000 gold. The sky's the limit when you zoom out and you also consider what happens when the US dollar loses reserve status. The value of the dollar will plummet and inflation will go up. Am I wrong?
So there you have it, though. A spoiler alert, right? We've been giving you that spoiler alert for some time, but nonetheless, though, that's what's being talked about, right? And you see how they're going to use water as a weapon. Everything's going to be considered a weapon because you need those resources to survive. It's not like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to limit my gas and I just might be doing walkabout and carrying a wagon or whatever. You don't have those options when it comes to food and water. U.S. company under fire after workers warned against fleeing Colombia earthquake. Oh, so people wanted to escape, but they were told that they had to stay. U.S. healthcare company has come under fire after manager at its Colombia operation was filmed warning employees that they could face consequences for leaving work during the earthquake. So yeah, they ain't got a job to come to, and their homes have been destroyed, right? But you got this piece of shit fucking threatening to fire them, right? Yeah, that's Esau for you. The 7.4 magnitude earthquake struck Western Colombia on Monday, killing more than 200 people and leaving thousands missing, buildings collapsed, and infrastructure damaged across several cities, prompting the government to declare national disaster. So, people were told that they'd be fired. So there we are. They're being told that they'd be fired if they didn't continue to work. Talk about the devil, right? You leave, you're fired. What an asshole, right? What a pendejo. And Trump recently went on TV and said that the U.S. controls Hormuz Strait and says, I think we'll keep it. Confirms economic siege strategy. The USA has total control over the Strait of Hormuz. I think we'll keep it. Our naval blockade is being called by everyone a wall of steel, and there is nothing being called by everyone a wall of steel, and there's nothing Iran can do about it. They have no navy, they have no air force. Oh boy, you know, talking about nose growing, right? The IRGC is decimated and fleeing, and their leadership is uncertain at best. They have no money. Their country is shut. All they have is fake news and 300% inflation, and it's getting worse. Iran is all talk and no action. The bully of the Middle East no longer. Praise be to Allah. And this is from President Trump. So it's hilarious, isn't it? You know, these things that Trump spouts out, right? Well, they think that their house will continue forever, but it's the U.S. who's losing. U.S. and Iran agreed to extend 60-day ceasefire ahead of August 17 deadline. So, you know, you want to talk about Trump shit? Now you're saying that there's another 60 days. See how this is all pushing towards that ground invasion, towards the winter? Yeah. And don't forget the draft in a couple more weeks, right? So they're going to have everything ready. There is going to be a ground operation, which, yeah, you're going to see massive casualties, way worse than what you've already seen. The U.S. and Iran have agreed to extended 60-day ceasefire under the Islamic Memorandum of Understanding, as the agreement is set to expire on August 17. Both sides conveyed their consent to the mediators to extend the deadline, a source close to the mediation process said. However, the two sides are exchanging messages to decide on the extension period, source said. So like everything else, though, here's what's really going on. Iran rejects reports of a ceasefire extension with D.C. because D.C. hasn't even kept at all to it and has violated it. So it's a no-go anyways. But Trump wants to pretend that it has some. So that's 5 days from now, the August 17th. Seems to fit in with the 3 weeks needed to draft everyone. Seem to be the same timeline, doesn't it? Tehran continues to deny claims that there are any talks with the U.S., which has repeatedly violated the Memorandum of Understanding with attacks and a blockade. This report came as Turkish media claimed an extension agreement had been made. There were no discussions between Iran and the U.S. to extend the ceasefire. So, like everything else, though, you could say that somebody's lying, right? Well, how do you know when a politician's lying, right? Their lips move. So here we go. The U.S. is in panic mode and still trying to find an exit strategy, but can't because King Bibi says no. Reminds me of the old Ministry song, Stigmata, where the main lyrics is, you've run out of lies. And that's just it. Esau's run out of lies. Only the retards believe any of his lies.
Well, the fact is that Trump doesn't really listen to anyone else. Trump is a genius in his estimation, and he thinks that he knows what's best. So he has set up this system inside the White House where he does have some advisors, but they're basically people who live in fear of him. And if they tell him something he doesn't like, he's free to ignore them.
Or fire them.
Congress has remarkably little power in the foreign policy realm. So President Trump is pretty much free to do whatever he wants. And this is how we got into this war in the beginning. You want to remember that almost all of his principal advisors were opposed to the war. This includes the head of the CIA, General King, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the vice president, and the Secretary of State. They all thought that going to war against Iran in the fashion that we planned to do on February 28th was foolish. And of course, they proved right. But Trump refused to listen to them, paid hardly any attention, and instead listened to Benjamin Netanyahu and David Barnea, who is the head of Mossad. But this is just the way things work in the United States at this point in time.
Today, we are witnessing what can only be described as a catastrophic unraveling of American and Zionist ambitions against the Islamic Republic of Iran. The hype, the bluster, the threats, they have all collapsed under the weight of reality. And at the center of this implosion stands Professor John Mearsheimer, the renowned University of Chicago political scientist, who has delivered a verdict that the Pentagon and the White House desperately do not want to hear, but can no longer ignore. The United States has already lost this war. Not might lose, has lost. And while the neoconservatives and their allies in the occupation regime try to spin this as a strategic pause, the evidence on the ground tells a story of utter humiliation. Let's set the scene with the most recent developments because the sheer speed of these events is staggering. Just today, August the 10th, Iran's supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei, who has been largely out of the public eye for months while directing the war effort, signed off on a sweeping military reshuffle, formally appointing 6 senior military commanders. This isn't just routine bureaucratic housekeeping. This is a consolidation of wartime leadership that has been operating in the shadows since the opening strikes of this brutal war back on February 28th. Strikes that killed Iran's previous armed forces chief of staff, Abdolrahim Mousavi, IRGC commander Mohammad Pakpour, and defense minister Aziz Nasirzadeh. The new appointments are telling. Ali Abdullahi, who has been coordinating Iran's joint wartime operations as head of the Khatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, has now been officially named Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces. Ahmad Vahidi has been confirmed as Commander-in-Chief, promoted to Major General. Former Army Ground Forces Commander Kiomars Haydari steps in as Abdullahi's deputy. Rear Admiral Ali Azmaei takes command of the naval forces after the killing of his predecessor in July. And perhaps most significantly, Hossein Tayyib, a name that sends shivers down the spines of those who understand Iran's internal security apparatus, has been appointed commander of the Basij paramilitary force. This is the return of a heavyweight, a man who spent more than a decade heading the intelligence organization and remains deeply embedded in the security establishment. What does this tell us? It tells us that Tehran is not retreating. It is not negotiating from weakness. It is doubling down, streamlining its command structure, and signaling to the world that it is ready for whatever comes next. And you can bet your bottom dollar that the occupation forces and their American backers are watching this with cold sweat dripping down their spines. Before I go any further, if you are finding this analysis valuable and you want to see more honest journalism,
subscribe to survive, right?
Please do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear the truth. Back to the story. And the humiliation doesn't stop at the Pentagon's war fatigue. The occupation regime is in absolute disarray. The Mossad, the vaunted intelligence agency that has been trying to destabilize Iran for decades, is in crisis mode. Reports have emerged that Mossad chief Roman Goffman has sacked 2 of his most senior officials, the head of the intelligence directorate and the head of the Iran division, over a failed plan to topple Iran's government. But here's where the story takes an even more fascinating turn, because we need to look beyond the battlefield and understand the geo-economic chess game that is being played beneath the surface. For decades, Iran warned that a major war would put the Strait of Hormuz at risk. Through this narrow waterway passes roughly 1/5 of the world's oil. It is the jugular of the global energy system. But here's a question that the mainstream media refuses to ask. What if this crisis in the Strait was never an unintended consequence of the war? What if it was the opening move in a much larger plan to reshape the entire energy map of the region? Think about it.
Correct.
The longer the Strait remains unstable, the easier it becomes to sell alternatives. And what is the alternative on the table? It's called IMEC, the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. This is a planned trade corridor that would link India to Europe through the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and, crucially, the occupation entity. It would bypass the Strait of Hormuz entirely, offering a stable, overland route for trade and energy transmission that surgically excludes Iran.
Supporting the war in Ukraine, and of course Fox News fits the same description. So Murdoch has a huge influence in that regard. We all know that Trump loves to watch Fox News and that he gets lots of his information from Fox
how
News.
you got
So I'm sure that's helped him to think that there is a way to win this war. Although I would imagine at this point in time that President Trump has come to recognize that there's no way he can win this war. And that's why I like to argue that he's flailing around. It's the way it works in the United States. I don't know what else to say. We know that even before President Trump took office, that Congress had remarkably little power in terms of controlling the executive branch. It was true when Joe Biden was president. And then along comes Trump, and Trump has a Republican majority in the Senate and the House. And those Republican senators and congresspeople are beholden to him, and they're scared stiff, except for a few exceptions, to challenge him. So he can pretty much do anything he wants without having to worry about Congress challenging him. And in terms of the media does complain here and there. But the media is actually remarkably hawkish when it comes to American foreign policy. And I think until things went south in Iran, the media, the mainstream media that is, was generally supportive of what Trump was doing. Trump was not taking a lot of heat from the mainstream media. So there are really no institutions in the United States, except for alternative media platforms that challenge him. And those alternative media platforms are important because they have played a key role in shifting public opinion against President Trump on a number of key foreign policy issues. But that opposition from inside the public doesn't matter much either because Trump just disregards it. There's at the very least going to be a great reduction in the U.S. military presence in the Gulf. I mean, as you know, what's been happening here is that the United States has been moving assets out of the Gulf region to Jordan. And now there's evidence, given that the Iranians are attacking U.S. military sites inside of Jordan, that we're moving assets to Israel and back to Europe. The fact is that these Iranian ballistic missiles are deadly effective against American military bases in the region. And they have either badly damaged or destroyed almost all of them. And it's hard to imagine how once this war ends, number one, the United States is willing to rebuild these bases and put the assets, the American assets, back in the region. And number two, it's hard to believe that the Gulf states themselves are going to want those assets on their territory. Because in effect, what happens is those Gulf states become a giant magnet for these deadly effective Iranian ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones, which, by the way, will only become a more formidable threat with the passage of time because the Iranians have figured out exactly what they have here. And they're not good ways for the Americans or the Gulf states to defend against those missiles and drones. So I think moving forward, there's no question there's going to be at least a great reduction of American military assets in the Gulf region. I didn't think he'd get very far with it, simply because the Ukrainians have no interest in widening the war. The Ukrainians are on the verge of losing their war against Russia. They're suffering enormously on the battlefield and in the air war. And it would be crazy for them to start a war with a country like Iran in the Middle East. And furthermore, from Iran's point of view, the last thing Iran wants to do is get into a fight with Ukraine. It makes more sense, much more sense for Iran to concentrate on winning the war in the Gulf against the United States and Israel. So neither side, and here I'm talking about the Iranians and the Ukrainians, had any interest in escalating. And of course, what happened is that the Ukrainians apologized to the Iranians, and the Iranians called off their planned counterattack. The Iranians had planned to hit 3 sites inside of Ukraine, and they called off that attack because Zelensky apologized. Well, I think there are 2 dimensions to the Ukrainian.
But he does owe them money for that too.
One
he did promise
how
to pay
those drones affect events on the battlefield. And I think the drones, the Ukrainian drones, have been Ukraine's great savior on the battlefield. I believe that this war would have ended a year or 2 if the Ukrainians didn't have drones, because the Ukrainians have a significant shortage of manpower, a significant shortage of artillery. And in a war that was heavily dependent on just manpower and artillery, I think the Ukrainians would have collapsed a while ago. But the drones have really helped keep them in the fight in an important way.
So there you have it. That's why Kiev hasn't been taken over. It's because even Putin underestimated the drones. However, though, if Iran were to help Russia with that problem, that's another thing Zelensky couldn't afford. So, like everything else, though, as you can see, the whole thing is falling apart. You know, and that's just the way that the Most High ordained it, right? We're living in the times that the Most High spoke of, when he will begin to visit the world which he made. How Iran adapted its attacks against U.S. war munitions dwindled. The Iranian strikes that killed three soldiers in Jordan show how quickly Iran's warfighting skills have evolved as the Pentagon runs low on interceptors. They basically made them deplete all of them, as they were defending the Israeli state and not really defending the Gulf states. During 5 intense days last month, Iran launched waves of drones and missiles against U.S. terrorists at 3 bases in Jordan, hoping to break through the formidable American air defenses. Using advanced missiles that can suddenly change course, Iran pummeled the bases' defense systems, forcing the Americans to burn through scarce supplies of Patriot interceptors. On the 5th day, Iran broke through. A missile struck prefabricated housing units at one of the bases on the 17th of July, killing 3 U.S. terrorists and wounding more than 100. Pentagon officials later acknowledged that scores of other troops were injured and several aircraft damaged in attacks against Jordan that week. So like everything else though, they have become more superior. And they're getting better. Burned out U.S. aircraft carrier sailors near Iran tried to jump overboard. almost pretty much so you could say that that's a surrender. Sailors on the U.S. aircraft carrier operating near Iran attempted to jump overboard amid exhaustion and low morale caused by extended operations, several news outlets reported. Families have expressed concern over living conditions and mental health on the USS Lincoln, whose deployment began in late November and was expected to end in May, but has since been extended indefinitely. The ship reportedly went long periods without regular port visits for replenishment, maintenance, and rest. So like everything else, though, they're burned out and they want out of it. Can't blame them for that. Turkey believes Israeli state fabricated Trump Air Force One assassination plot. Yeah, no shit. Trying to give you the idea that Iran's trying to assassinate them. Everybody knows that's horse shit. Even though they do have a death warrant for them, they are not going to violate international laws to do it. Yeah, there's a death warrant for Trump, no doubt about it. But they are not going to violate any international laws to do it. And so, despite what the mainstream is saying, Iran hasn't violated any international laws as far as that goes. Washington Post reported on Monday that the U.S. thought there were a credible enough threat against Trump that he was secretly swapping planes when he departed Turkey. The president flew into Ankara on a new Air Force One donated by Qatar, but made a public show of departing on the older Air Force One, saying he was doing so for old time's sake. So like everything else, so the whole thing was fabricated. Just like all the other Trump assassination attempts and were. The war against Iran cracked the U.S.-led regional order. The Mecca Pact could be the final blow. The new alliance is no Sunni Islamic NATO against Iran, but could lay the foundation for an independent security framework that eventually draws in Tehran, Cairo, and beyond. In other words, later on Iran and Egypt could actually join in on it, but for right now, it's an agreement with those three countries. In other words, pretty much so, defense, a real defense, not like the fake U.S.-Israeli one, because all the U.S. did defend is the Israeli state. The signaling of a joint defense agreement in Mecca on the 7th of August between Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan particularly set off a flurry of explanations. This is the obvious reading. Saudi Arabia's contribution is clear. Enormous financial reserves and commanding geographic and religious position. Turkey offers something different as one of the region's most formidable conventional armies. Pakistan, meanwhile, being perhaps the most consequential asset of all, a large battle-tested military and the Muslim world's only nuclear arsenal. So, like everything else, though. Well, and this is true. Suez was a death knell for the British Empire. Hormuz will do the same for the U.S. Yep. It ends their petrodollar, but that was the whole point, is to usher in the new digital dollar. Houthis renew ballistic missile attack against Yemen's Mocha port. You see, they're tired of Saudi Arabia in there, so they're just going to take back all these places. Yemen's Houthis group renewed ballistic missile attacks against the strategic port of Mocha near the Bab al-Mandab Strait in southwestern Yemen. State-run Sabah TV said in a brief report that the Houthis targeted the port with ballistic missiles without providing further details. There was no immediate comment from the Houthis. The report came a day after government forces said the Houthis targeted Mocha with 10 ballistic missiles and 4 drones. Like everything else, though, now's the time to chase off the Saudi enemy. And, well, as they're ushering in that new world order, well, got some scriptures here before I close this out. So as they get ready to forge their new world order, because that's basically what it is, right? The second beast who has all the power of the first beast, and their plans for the new world order, which ultimately ends, by nuclear destruction. But when he creates the new digital all, that's another nickname for it, but the MOTB, and mandates that everybody has this chip inside of them in order to be able to buy and sell. Revelation chapter 13, verse 12, New King James Version. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence and causes the death to those who dwell in it and to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed, aka the New World Order. And he was, verse 15, he was granted power to give breath unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Those that didn't go along with the New World Order to be killed. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark in the right hand or in their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except the one who has the mark or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Well, pretty much so. You know, if you ain't got it, you ain't going to be able to partake in the New World Order. Here is wisdom. Let he who has understanding, so only the elect are going to have the understanding, calculate the number of the beast. For it is the number of a man. His number is 666. And what's interesting is the number of the man, Nero Caesar, is 666, which we believe, you know, that Nero 47 is a nickname for him. Nero Caesar is Donald Trump today. You know, we totally believe that. We have the understanding of who he is. And so a lot of things are about to take place. So hopefully this has been edifying. Got one more here before I close this out. Then we'll say Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem B'Kakadosh, Wa Abba Babal. Brakatum, Jehovah Olek, Shalom.
Kala Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem B'Kakadosh. The witness of the apostles at Great Millstone, salute to brothers teaching the word in sincerity and in truth. So this is you get these videos from time to time, all the time actually, man, and they're basically about the system that is gonna come in according to, you know, the prophecy and revelations, and you get different, whether it's heads of the EU and things like that. I'm talking about digital, the cashless society. So if you look at here, it says Euro goes digital. Now this is some round table. I'm gonna play some of it. It's a round table talk. This is some, you know what I'm saying? And they're going into, this was a couple of days ago or whatever. But all these things are biblical, Bible prophecy. And that's why the scripture talks about standing on your watch. Because we're watching the things that are going to come in. Let's I'm going to read Habakkuk in a minute. Let's play this.
The EU is to launch a digital euro as a means of pushing back against non-European payment platforms, largely dominated by American companies. The European Central Bank says it won't replace cash and coins, but will help people make secure payments online. So, just how will it work? And is it really necessary?
So, there's a digital pound. There's a digital euro. And I got different reasons why they're saying they're bringing it in. But there's always going to be a reason, isn't there? And then you know, I've done videos on that particular point where it was to do with a judge, and I think it was the small hats and all that. So, but let's play her.
Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, the European Union plans to boost financial resilience across the bloc by launching a digital euro. The aim is to tackle big payment platforms like Visa and PayPal, which are not European owned.
Yeah, what happened was, I think it was a judge on the Trump's case or on one of them small hats case. And actually, it was Netanyahu, and he got blocked. and he was they blocked his account. So when he was in Europe, he was using Visa, obviously MasterCard and all that. He couldn't use it. So in Europe said, oh, well, what we need to do is have our own digital money to counteract that. That's literally what they said on the news reports. And they had the judge up there and everything. So these are obviously wiles, tricks to get it in there. I wonder if they'll mention that in this.
Pilot of the scheme will be launched next year, and to test the digital currency, the EU has recruited some of the project's biggest critics.
It's not replacing cash, and it's not a new cryptocurrency. The digital euro will be an electronic version of cash issued by the European Central Bank, the only form of the bank's money available digitally. The EU wants to break free from US credit cards. Currently, most digital payments go through private systems that aren't European, such as American companies Visa and MasterCard. It's become a more pressing issue since Donald Trump returned to the White House, increasing tariffs on even established trade partners like the EU, raising fears the US could use its networks to halt payment.
Yeah, I'll pause it. I mean, but if you check out, it's not just a Europe thing, is it? And versus America. Obviously, we know that Europe and America are odds. But what we do, but at the same time, the use of a digital money, digital cash is a global thing. That's because you see in AI tech, all of that stuff happening globally. Look at Sweden. Look at what's going on in their countries. In Africa, they're pushing, and India, they're pushing heavy AI and cashless. Cashless is big over there. So whatever the reason is, whatever they say, this is the reason, that's the reason. The bottom line is that it's an agenda from up top, from the elites, so-called elites of this world, rulers of the darkness of this world.
Or freeze assets in some countries.
Sand dollar is the new digital Bahamian dollar created by the Central Bank of the Bahamas.
The Bahamas was one of the first countries in the world to launch its own digital currency, known as the sand dollar, in 2020. It was designed to promote financial inclusion across its remote islands. So, how would a euro work digitally? Consumers would be able to use the digital euro with a payment card or via mobile banking apps, so it's not that different from how we currently pay. But basic use of it would be entirely free of charge and includes an offline mode for internet-free transactions. So the main advantages aren't in offering new consumer features, but rather in resilience, safety, and having a publicly issued digital payment option. Critics argue that the digital euro will reduce financial privacy compared to cash, and shifting deposits away from commercial banks could increase lending costs and restrict credit. But after the European Parliament's approval of the digital currency,
of course, it approved it because that's the agenda that they want to get. Let me get one or two quick scriptures here before. I forget him. A couple of things came. This was it. Habakkuk 2:1. I will stand upon my watch, and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, what I shall answer when I am reproved. So, pretty much, we're watching for these different changes that are happening in society, because it's major prophecy that we won't be using cash right now, using what they call them IOUs or fiat currency and shit like that, paper notes, plastic notes. It's not real money anyway, but they want to strip that and make it with digital as well on top of that. So these are just some prophecies that are taking place here. Habakkuk 2:2, and the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. All right. Make the vision plain upon tables, that he may run. Okay, that readeth it. So these things that are supposed to be pretty plain, and you've got something called cashless society, and you know which lines up right with the mark of the beast, the chip, the AI, all that. A cashless society is an economic system where physical banknotes and coins are replaced by digital methods like credit cards, mobile wallets, and bank transfers. Now, the implant, the biometrics. Let me type in this cashless society biometrics. I'm gonna go. As society shifts away from physical currency, biometric identification, such as fingerprints, facial recognition, and hand vein scans, is emerging as a primary tool to secure and authorize digital payments without cards or cash. So there you got it right there. Paying without having a physical object. You don't need, you don't actually, the way they've said it, so that's where things are headed. So these are the things that we're making plain. I'm going to go back in and watch the rest of this. But let's read Revelations 13 quickly. We'll go back to that. These are the things that we're making plain. Revelation 13:16, and he causeth all, both small and great. That's where you got euro, digital pound, digital Caribbean, you know what I'm saying? Bahamas. They got all that cashless in Africa, everywhere. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. It's your brain implant, the arm implants, hand implants, that no man might buy or sell. So either had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Yeah, the NFC RFID chip. Okay, let's go on.
In a landmark vote, the central bank is going ahead and has even recruited some of the scheme's biggest opponents to help test it next year. After that, the digital euro could be landing in your wallet from 2029.
And we believe before that, because that's how things happen. Quick, because they've been pushing it and speeding things up. They want it to be quicker than that. Oh, they were pushing digital IDs. Revelation 12:12. They're gonna try and speed this New World Order up.
Well, let's bring in our guests for this one. Joining us from Brussels, we have Oliver Drews. He is a former spokesperson for the EU Commission. In Casablanca, in Morocco, we have Cedric Nicolas. He is a Web3 blockchain consultant and entrepreneur. And I'm delighted to say, back in the studio with me, we have Daniel Kroll, who is a lead economist at Oxford Economics. You're all very welcome to Roundtable, guys. Daniel, to you first of all, why are they doing this?
Well, I think the context of the last few years is that we've had separate developments in the crypto world, in blockchain technologies, which central banks want to stay on top of. And also, on the other hand, we have declining use of cash. So the original rationale...
So the individual asked why they're doing this. That's a valid question. Why are you doing this? And he said, well, and this is what I noticed the banks have done. This is one of the things the bank said as well. The Bank of England on their website and things like that, the information and just different information they've pulled out. They said, well, we're doing it because people are paying more. The world's changed and people are paying cashless, so we've got to get up to date. It doesn't make sense. So that's one of the excuses. Okay, well, who set that up in the first place? They're acting like it just random, it just happened, and they're just trying to get on board with it. This is fucking BS, man. And then he mentioned the cryptocurrencies, so they're all trying to get on board with that as well. Okay, but this is what the scripture says: never trust thine enemy, because he's gonna deceive people into getting this mark, and then they'll be damned. You know what I'm saying? So the scriptures clearly there's got a stance for what happens when that mark of the beast comes out, man.
Why the ECB started looking into central bank digital currency. By the way, not the only central bank. In fact, most central banks are looking into some form of their own digital currency, is to preserve sort of stable, secure access to a digital form of cash for people when cash sort of is on a secular decline. Over time, this started in 2020, and then over time with the new Trump administration, the argument that's gained prominence is more about European sovereignty, monetary sovereignty, and without cutting our reliance, if you will, on American payment providers, which we rely on so heavily. But that's really something that's sort of been added on later on. The initial context comes from really the technological development that happened in the world, as well as there's declining use of cash. And it really started off as a small sort of technical working group at the ECB that's kind of gained a life of its own and continued as it often does.
Cedric, to you, is that the primary motivation here, that there's...
Oh, let's do this. So you got an Irishman there talking about this. You got, I don't know where the other dude, what part of Europe he's from. Let's do this. How biometrics drive digital payments allows users to pay with a simple touch of a finger, scan of a hand, or a glance at a terminal. Replaces easily lost plastic cards and forgotten pins with unique physical traits. Yeah, it's you know, like you tracked, because you know people make money on illegally or on the side, or you know, because even like if you got side hustles, they try and make it hard to do that. Like you know, there's permits, and if you want to sell food or you want to do anything, you know, anything you want to do to make it hard. But basically, with that whole being chipped, everything digital, so how are you going to make anything without them? Nobody. You know what I'm saying? And they're saying, oh, well, it won't track you. That's what they're saying about the NFC RFID chip. But they put chips in animals to track it. So leaves no physical trace to be stolen in transit. Minimizing traditional point of scale. So let's check this. Okay, let's carry on actually. Key challenges and concerns. Unlike a compromised password or card, biometric data cannot be reset or changed if breached. Digital exclusion relies heavily on advanced infrastructure that may leave behind unliked or vulnerable populations. Well, you got Georgia Guidestones and the overpopulation thing for that. They want people dead anyway, especially just dead, you know. Raises worries about extensive government and corporate tracking of everyday commerce. what I want to do, there's two things I wanted to do, kind of slipped my mind now. Let me get this. Every time I type this in, doesn't matter if I type it in right, it never comes up. So it's crazy. I took partial off. I had exact and partial on. Because I had partial on, it didn't give me the exact one, even though I had it ticked as well. So it should have given me both. Anyway, Ecclesiasticus 12:10. Never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. So, hey man, like it says, never trust. Because they're gonna say what they've got to say to push the Revelation 13, and where else you going to hear about the mark of the beast? You can hear it from the Bible, the prophets. You know what I'm saying. Where else you going to hear about it? Because people are just going with it. The scriptures, but not following a multitude to do evil. Let's see if I can find that. Exodus 23:2. Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. So a lot of those masses are just blind followers that are pretty much going down to do something that the Heavenly Father is completely against. You got people trying to judge. The Most High with that is, if you need to pay for something, hell no.
There's a huge reliance in Europe on American payment platforms like Visa and MasterCard and PayPal, and the EU basically wants to have their own version.
Yeah, of course, it's a motivation. Yeah, even if this dominance of Visa and Mastercard and all the system is quite different from the different countries in the eurozone. For example, in France, we have our own banking card system called CB. So we are much more independent, but on the northern country of Europe, they heavily rely on Visa and Mastercard. So yeah, it's a legitimate motivation, but in my opinion, it's not the digital euro is not necessarily the best solution to achieve a better sovereignty, but we will talk about that.
Thank you. Oliver, to you. So the EU wants financial resilience. It strikes me that they're a little bit late to this digital party that's going on. A lot of others have made big strides.
Well, I don't think that's really an argument, because you can say better late than never. Now, a different question if this is the right solution. But where we stand now, we have that the European Parliament voted overwhelmingly in favor to start negotiations with the member states on how we could shape this digital euro. So that's where we are.
And tell me, you're quite optimistic about this.
Well, optimistic, I'm not sure if I'm optimistic. I'm just describing the situation as it is. The European Parliament wants to have it. The member states now have to agree to it. And even then, if we will have it in terms of legal foundation, still the European Central Bank needs to first start kind of a model, and then it can be introduced only later. I understand 1929. And at the end of the day, the citizens, the consumers decide if they like the digital euro or if they like any other forms of payment or whatever we have. And
this is what we say now, the people. Oh, come on, man, this is crazy. When they pushed that digital ID, they weren't going, oh, what's the people's choice? This is crazy, man. Let me. I'm gonna type something in here. Let's type in. Is it the people's decision if we have the digital money? We didn't really say it. They already pushed it. There's been no votes on that from the people yet. What's he talking about? There you go. It says whether we have central bank digital money is ultimately decided by elected governments and central banks, not by the public vote. Though public feedback heavily influences the process. Okay. So they want it full stop. They've already started pushing it. And it's just about how it's just how. Oh, let's go back there.
Mind you, the world moves very fast. In 29, maybe everything looks different.
Thank you. Daniel, how popular will this be? Because I can't remember the last time I actually had cash.
So we dropped in there, well, everything's moving fast in the world will look different in 2029. So, you know, these people are you know, they're used to us trying to slick talk, you know. But that's his spirit. That's what he does, you know. I'll just play on.
Coins in my hands.
Well, that is the big question, but it's important to know that the ECB, or when it's rolled out, there will be different mechanisms that potentially can be used to incentivize or even force people to use the digital euro. For example, what if government transfers, if you're a recipient of it, are only paid into your digital euro wallet, or if some form of payment can only be conducted in this, that's the uncertainty. But we can look at the example of China, which has already rolled out its digital yuan, and it's actually the use has grown very, very fast. And part of that is because consumers and businesses are nudged or kind of forced to use it through sort of concrete limits on their action of what they can do, or even expiry of, imagine you get some payment into your wallet, but it expires in a few days, you need to spend it. So that's a way to nudge economic agents towards state objectives, if you will.
And tell me, is there any concern about the age and the demographics involved here? That, you know, young people will jump on board with this, they'll handle the technology, they'll have a digital wallet. But say pensioners, older people, vulnerable people, people who aren't tech savvy, got any concerns about them?
Well, that's different rationales for why these digital currencies are rolled out, or it's central bank currencies. There's an example in the Bahamas where it's a set of remote islands that are prone to natural disasters, where a lot of people are excluded from the financial system, and it's been rolled out there relatively successfully for financial inclusion purposes. That's not the case in the Eurozone. Everybody who wants to have a bank account, who wants to be included in the financial system, already is. The people who are not chose not to be. And so that's why this idea of let's include more people that are currently excluded, the argument does not work in the Eurozone. So that's why take-up is the issue. It comes down to incentives. The latest proposal that I've seen is that the deposits that you have in the digital wallet will not have any interest. Now, that's a major sort of drawback compared to commercial deposits, especially if you assume that interest rates by the ECB are going to stay higher for longer now. That means commercial deposits are going to have an attractive interest rate. Why would people keep any money or use the digital euro if it's just idle money attracting no interest?
Well, that's a very good point. Let's put that to Cedric. Cedric, the banks don't want this, do they?
Yeah, most of banks have issue with this digital euro scheme because they are afraid that the deposit will be drained to this wallet. That's why the holding limit has been put. But this holding limit has also some drawbacks because this will, of course, limit some type of usages. So the banks have pushed a lot to include those kind of constraints, which leads also to have to integrate what we call the waterfall mechanism, meaning that if you have if you receive a payment and you are close to the holding limit, then some money will automatically goes back to your linked account, or at the opposite, if you want to pay something and you don't have enough, so you will take money automatically.
It says at the bottom, 36 European banks will be involved in pilot scheme next year. They've gone through certain phases already of it. You know, when you've got the head of the EU banks, and let's just check this. Okay, there's stuff on that, but let's do this. EU leader, I don't know. Let's put EU leader. The primary face of the EU's executive branch is Ursula von der Leyen, if you say it like that. So I was going to put in the president of the EU, but there's another see who this dude is. Okay, I'm gonna look him up. I don't really see much with him, but I'm always seeing and the other one actually, the EU bank. So you got the European Commission. And then you got okay, the link located in Frankfurt, Germany. Let's put in leader. So Christine Lagarde. Let's go back here.
Automatically from your specified bank account, but this increases a lot the complexity of the service. And regarding effectively what you said, David, I fully agree with this. The financial inclusion will be even more difficult because the usability of the service will be quite a nightmare for people that are not digitally aware. So that's why the push from the banks are legitimate, but make the system even more complex.
And Cedric, can I just ask, the banks as well make a lot of interest on our physical cash that's in their vaults. So if people are drawing down that money to put into a digital wallet, the banks don't have access to those funds. So it's very selfish and self-centered, their criticism of this, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, but you need to remind the business model of banks. Banks make money by granting credits and loans, and they can only do that if they have some deposits. Okay, because this is what we call the system where you can grant loan money if you have existing deposits. So they are afraid of that. Of course, that's why we have this holding limit. But on the other hand, the digital euro will be distributed mostly by the banks. I mean, because the ECB decided that they will not distribute that directly to the consumers, and I can understand why, because they are not an institution to directly address all the EU citizens. Sorry. So So the banks are in difficult position there because they will see some deposit going away, but they will have to distribute that system. The cost of operating it will certainly be quite high. And on the other end, we have the promise from the ECB to say, yeah, it will be free for the end user, even free also for the merchants. So at the end, you can.
Let's do this. Let me do this. Because what? Let's do this. Let's go to Micah 2:1. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand. So Esau has all these different meetings, councils, and that. So this is the kind of stuff. That's what you see in here. You know, think tanks, meetings, and there's an agenda, and obviously, but they're just going through certain what would you call it, like technicalities, and they do that to map people out, to map out how much people they think will accept it, rebel, the push it, the see the reaction of the people, you know. Job 5, to set upon high those that be low, that those which mourn may be exalted to safety. And you know, you're gonna need to be protected by Yahweh Hashem Yahushai in these days that are coming on the planet. He disappointeth the devices of the crafty, so that their hands cannot perform their enterprise. He disappointeth the devices of the crafty. Because all this is going to get disappointed, but they are going to be there's going to be mass shipping stations, warehouses, football stadiums, you know, tattoo artists, whoever, doctors, whoever the hell, you know what I mean? They're going to have all this going on.
And ask yourself, but who will pay for that? Okay, so we have all those questions that are not solved at all today. And so we are going to a path that is completely unclear, in my opinion.
Thank you, Cedric. Oliver, to you, I noticed 2 European Union countries want nothing to do with this, Bulgaria and Malta. Any idea why, and can the EU force them on board?
Well, look, first of all, we must be reminded of the fact that the Parliament voted in favor of this. But what the Parliament voted for is just kind of signaling that they are ready to start negotiations. So Parliament is one pillar of lawmaking here. The other pillar are the member states, and they have to agree on something together. And the issues just mentioned earlier are key issues also for these 2 countries, like the issues just privacy, the role of commercial banks, limits, financing. If too much cash is in the digital euro, then it's not only that the banks don't earn, but also that this money is not, let's say, invested in innovation, or that the money is not working for society, so to speak. So we cannot say that these 2 countries can block it, but these are not the only countries having concern. So it really depends on how in these negotiations, these key issues, which are mentioned by the 2 other visitors in this program, how they will play out. If you ask me now today, will we have a digital euro? And I mean a digital euro in terms of a legal framework for it.
You know what's interesting about this is you've got England, you've got mainland Europe, and then you've got England, yeah, which is like they don't consider it mainland Europe. You've got Eastern Europe, Western Europe, mainland Europe, all that sort of stuff. But and you got the countries that are economically strong and economically weak. But the UK is doing their own thing with the digital pound. Because they don't use euros. Now, Southern Ireland uses euros because Southern Ireland is not part of the UK. The UK is England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. Okay. Digital pound is a proposed central bank digital currency. CBDC, central bank. You know, let me do this. Being explored by the Bank of England and Her Majesty's Treasury to serve as a digital form of cash for everyday use. Right? So that's in its own stages. Let me put in this. So they both got their own little, but they're all doing the same thing. So this year, what we're in 2027 piloting phase. So they're gonna have it out. We can be quicker than this. Okay, so it's got some information on that. Let me go back here. Job 5:13. He taketh the wise in their own craftiness, and the counsel of the forward is carried headlong. They meet with darkness in the daytime and grope in the noonday as in the night. They're having meetings, and then they'll pass a legislation. But they've sat down, and before it goes on these shows, these medias and it's just the elites that are sitting down having these conversations.
I think the chances are about 80 to 85%. But if we have that, and the timeline is foreseen that, say, January next year, then it means we only have the legal foundations for it. Then the European Central Bank still needs to decide if they want to implement it, if they want to use this instrument. So let's see, the arguments of these two countries have to be taken aboard. As such, alone they cannot block it, but if they find key allies on other elements, and if they have good arguments and convince others, then they still can have a good influence or a substantial influence on the outcome of the negotiations, or even on if we will have the digital euro, yes or no.
Cedric, back to you just on that point. Why do you think Bulgaria and Malta don't want to get involved in this?
The pilot phase, they are not participating. But they are not alone, because on the 21 countries, we have only 16 countries being represented there. So there might have two others that are not there. But for now, we just to be precise, it's up to the private actors to pronounce themselves about be participants of that pilot. So there have been an RFQ for that, and finally 36 companies, private companies, have been selected. And we saw that, of course, that Bulgaria and Malta are not there. And what we can observe also on that pilot phase is there are quite few big banks, only 3, while most of banks are not represented there. In particular, the one who are participating in the API Wero wallet alliance. So this also shows that there is, I would say, a low support from the industry at large on that project, which might be a little bit worrying for the future of the project, because if those major participants are not there to tune and to develop and to test this product, then we can expect that the delay announced of 2029 will certainly slip for several years. And someone said about the China.
Oh, he's going to mention China. But at the end of the day, we know. Let's get this quickly. So scriptures we know, but let's do this. Revelation 12:12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he have but a short time. So they're pushing this fast. Okay. Didn't you hear what was it? Is Tony Blair? We need a digital ID. So they keep saying. So they're not laid back about this and all. No, they're itching for this. They're dying for it. You know, they're dying for this. This NWO thing, where it will be the technology that they'll be using for control. And there's different terms for this, but the scripture says you will not be able to buy nor sell. Let's do this. I want to do this. Let's do this. Let's type this in. What is the mark of the beast? The mark of beast. The mark of the beast is a symbolic concept. Symbolic. From the New Testament found in the book of Revelation. It is a sign placed on the right hand of the forehead. Yeah, it identifies people who follow the beast rather. No. Without this mark, people cannot buy or sell goods. If it's symbolic, and how are you not going to be able to buy or sell? See, that doesn't even make sense. He's mentioning Nero. Historical content. Some believe it refers to the Roman Empire and Emperor Nero. No, it's for this time. In ancient times, letters doubled as numbers gematria, and the numerical value of Nero's name aligned with the numbers in Revelation. And one thing we can say, reincarnation is in the Bible. We believe Nero to be Donald Trump. Alright. Literal future technology. Many modern Christians interpret it as a literal future high-tech device. People have suggested barcodes, microchips, or digital currencies might act as a system controlling commerce. And these and that's mainly because of what we've been taught from the apostles on down, that we've been teaching that, we've been pushing that. And it's not tattoos and you go and get a barcode or 666 tattooed on it. It's not talking about that. And the scripture ain't going to say, oh, the microchip. It's not going to word it like that. Okay, then you go into the word, and then you get the word charagma. All right, let's do this. Let's type in charagma. See if I can. Well, that's why I'm put up this. So let me tell you. Charagma is an ancient Greek word meaning a stamp, an imprinted mark, an engraving, or branded badge of servitude. Root word derived from karasso, meaning to sharpen to a point, scratch or itch. If you sharpen something, that's like you use a needle, right? And how did they put them things in you? With needles? Scratch your skin or it don't. When the doctors give people like injections or little kids and they'll go, oh, it's just gonna feel like a little scratch. That's what they say. Let's check this. Let's look at this. So she's got the using a little needle to the little scratch to put it in. So come on, man. If you don't want to understand this, man, you've got a lot of people, there's people that don't want this. There's people in the world, like, that they don't want digital ID. We've heard of microchips, they don't want these things, so let's go with it.
System, just to say that it is still in pilot phase. It has not been nationally deployed there after almost 6 years of service. I mean, they are in pilot phase for 6 years now. So honestly, I don't believe this digital euro will be massively rolled out in 2029. It's just impossible in my view due to the complexity of the project. And as the previous person said, all the legal framework is not established yet, and we know that compliance, a legal issue, may have huge impact on the project management itself. So let's see what will happen, but honestly, as an IT independent expert of this, I'm just saying, okay, if it's there in 2035, that will be good.
Thanks, Cedric. Daniel, are you as pessimistic about this and the timescale and it actually happening?
Well, I think there are different concerns relating to the project, and it's still a lot of moving parts, so it's hard to say, how it's all going to pan out. I think the way I look at it, and taking a little bit of a step back, I look at it more in terms of the opportunity cost, about how much time and effort is spent on this with so uncertain future, and ultimate question marks about the value add. Do we really need this? Are we solving a problem, or is this a solution in search of a problem? Where we have, problems like falling behind in the AI race, huge problems, productivity, competitiveness, capital markets union. These are the big topics that are going to make a material difference to our future. And that's what we should be focused on, rather than tying in the
change. You got this AI race.
Institutions, ECB, Council, Parliament, through this multi-year process, which about a project that, do we really need to go through with it when we have these competing objectives?
Pilot scheme next year. So 36 banks and financial institutions have been invited to get on board. I noticed quite a few of those invited in are actually critics of the scheme in the first place. Is that a genius move, or is it going to hamstring the whole thing?
Well, if you can't beat them, join them, I guess. But I think also coming back to the criticism that banks have made of it and portraying it as big bad banks just want to make money, and it actually impacts all of us. When banks say it's not going to be good for them, it's also not going to be good for businesses and consumers. Why is that? Because we're in a bank-based economy. Banks are the main providers of financing to companies in the Eurozone. And so their most stable, cheap, and reliable form of financing is customer deposits. And so when those are drawn down, they're going to have to rely on more volatile and expensive wholesale markets, which is going to be reflected in the cost of funding for businesses and consumers. And so when they say they're not fans because they are going to see a hit to their deposit base potentially, that is going to have a material impact on the rest of us. So it's not banks against us. We're in this together, and we are in a bank-based economy, we have to understand.
Do you think we're heading towards a cashless society in the European Union?
Well, I think interestingly, some countries, as a response to this sort of move towards digital euro, have made a constitutional right to cash. So we have 3 countries in the EU that have made it a constitutional amendment that people have right to cash. And I think cash is going to be here for some time. For some time to come. In some economies in the Nordics, for example, you struggle to pay with cash. You go on a street market and you would struggle. People don't accept cash there anymore. In other countries, go to...
Yeah, because that's where things are, that's the goal. Let me see, let me do this. Let's do this, let's go. Back here. Oh, let's do this. Let me see if I can get people protest. So you get protesters protesting against it. Bristol or something. I don't know where it was. Quotes. This is what I want. I don't know who that keeps quoting him. Kenneth Rajoff. I don't think it's time to eliminate cash, but I propose having a less cash society, not a cashless one. It's called gradualism. I don't know who this is. Ray Rolf Nader. Is there a number or mark planned for the handle forward in a new cashless society? Yes, I've seen the machines that are now ready to be put into operation. Ralph Nadar. Let's see who that is. Ralph Nadar. Okay, he's a lawyer. American lawyer. Protection, environment, and government reform. Political activist. Now, what does the scripture say? It deceived them that had gotten the mark. I think that's in a few. Let's see if I can. Let's get, you know what, let's get Revelation 20. Revelation 16:2, and the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image. I'm gonna jack you up, man. You're gonna get, pus and all that. When you merge man with this machine, that's Esau's demonic cyborg plan. Okay. Revelation 19:20, and the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet, that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone. So it's all deception, tactics, and all that.
To southern Italy, it's the opposite. You struggle to pay with card. So again, it's regional context and dynamics that make a big difference. It's hard to generalize for European, economy overall, because we have 27 different economies.
Thank you. That's fascinating. Oliver, your take on this being a success, are you as pessimistic about the timescale as well?
Well, look, I mean, the world is moving fast. Digitalization is moving fast. AI is moving fast. This is quite a huge time frame in terms of institutional things and so forth and so on. So in the end, we don't know if people will buy this, because at the end of the day, it's a decision of us, of you and me and everybody else in the Eurozone and beyond, if you want to have your digital euro in your mobile phone or in your system or anywhere. Most people just want to pay, and they want to pay efficiently and fast and smart. If that's going to be in digital euro or in any other form, probably people don't care as much. So if this thing will be a success, we can see it in effectiveness kind of on the ground. That remains to be seen. Success in an institutional time frame type of story, like, oh yes, we also have an institutionalized digital euro 25 years after having the euro in let's say the real monetary form. Well, maybe, and most likely, and I said like 80 to 85% we will succeed with that by having it early next year. But then it depends on a lot of factors, not only the institutional process, but also what else happens in the world, what other commercial operators come in the market, also in Europe, for cashless payments. And so I think nobody really can predict what will happen and what the uptake of it will be. That's, I think, really what we can most wisely say about it.
Thank you. Cedric, back to you.
So that's
How
where
difficult
that's where you go to the scriptures. Because it will tell you like Revelation 20:4 and stuff like that.
is it to challenge the dominance of some of the American pay?
The elect are going to be got off the grid and things like that. Some brought to concentration camps. That's how it's going to get with this.
Platforms, when everyone's got Apple Pay on their mobile phones, other products are available. They've become part of our lives, haven't they?
Yeah, effectively, the US, in Europe, the US providers are really dominant. It's interesting because it's not the case all over the world. If you look at China, they are not there. So it is not something which is fatal, I would say. My point is that I don't believe that a public institution like ECB can compete to get the attention and the usage from the EU citizens. Why? Because why those platforms were able to get so many users? It's because they are in competition between themselves. They are forced to improve the user experience, to reduce the cost for merchants as well, to get a very good customer support. So they are forced to always innovate when you see that the calendar is saying, okay, you may have it in 4 years, and today we have a design of that system, which is already published by the OR system, where you have 52 use cases, 100 of screens. So for me, it's already massively complex, while this digital euro wallet will compete with systems that since that time will be improved more and more. So honestly, it's very difficult to believe that there will be a massive adoption of that.
Cedric, your home country, I know you live in Morocco, but your home country is France. What's the French attitude towards these payment platforms? Would French people much rather have a European-based digital currency like a digital euro they can pay, or will they stick with American platforms?
It's a very good question. I don't think personally that the sovereignty is it's a selling argument by itself. I mean, there is some kind of exception, of course, like the judge of the international court where they have been blocked. Okay, but this is absolutely a section. But for
I'm
most,
gonna leave it there, man. It's gonna happen, and that's the bottom line. So, Revelation 14, the elect will not take the mark of the beast. They had, victory over that. So, hey, with that, I'm gonna say, Shalom.